Pratyahar. So what's Pratyahar? So Pratyahar is Prati plus Ahar. So Ahar is, and it's seen as food, but it's essentially anything that we consume. So we consume food, but we consume all the other sensory activities. We also consume thoughts. We also consume associations. So it's about what we consume, what we intake. And prati is a prefix which is added, which typically adds to like it basically says reverse it, reverse or go against it, go away from it. So pratyahar could be seen as going away from consumption, reversing consumption, and we'll see what that means. Now it's also important to see where pratyahar is actually situated, right? Out of the 8, it comes after 4. It's the last of the Bahirangs also. So what does that mean? So as we saw, prana is the connecting force between mind and body. Now pranayam practices or tools operate at the interface of the body and pran. So they operate between annamaya and pranamaya kosha, right? That's where we are operating with using breath as the access point. What pratyahar is doing, it's acting at the interface of the manomaya and pranamaya kosha. So it's taking us towards antarang, taking us towards the mind, but it's also still staying with prana. So it's at that interface. So all the ahar, like we said, all the movement is happening with prana as a key thing, and that's why pratyahar practices are positioned there. Again, like pranayam and asan, Patanjali Yoga Sutras don't give tools. They just give the essence of what these kinds of practices are. So there are only 2 sutras on this, and one of them, the final one, again is about what is achieved with pratyahar. Extreme control of the senses is what is achieved with pratyahar. But let's see now what are the tools. So how do we think about even consuming in the reverse direction or going away from consumption? What does that really mean? So just like in pranayam, we took breath as a proxy for prana. Here for consumption, the proxy is senses. As I said, we also consume through our mind. We consume thoughts as well, and associations or relationships as well. But for this purpose, we'll keep to it that let's take senses. That's the most common thing that we have, our sense perceptions, right? So the process of consumption, even now science talks of it as 4 stages roughly, if you see. One is accepting the stimulus, right? So basically it's like our eyes, ear, we're just seeing light is coming, light rays are coming, or sound is coming. That's accepting the stimulus. The second is converting the stimulus and transmitting it through electrical signals. So we don't see what we see as it is, right? We see it through our brain, in the mind, when this electrical signals make an image. So there is a whole process where, like in our eyes, there are the optical nerve and the retina, where the light is converted into an electrical signal, which is then transmitted through the optic nerve to our brain. At the brain, then there is a process. It's a quite an intricate process, if you see your vision, just converting these electrical signals to an image. So in fact, light rays or signals are coming through 2 optical nerves, if you see, like through our 2 eyes. And they get converted into one single image. And that's the processing that happens in our mind, right? In our brain. And then the last stage where we make meaning of this image, we really comprehend what is that. And this holds, I've used image, that's why in quotes, that this is happening with all the senses, right? Same with our ears. The ears also have a breakdown. There is an external ear, mid ear, then an inner ear. There are 3 stages through which this signal goes. There is a stage where there is a membrane, the ear membrane, that actually converts that physical vibration into an electrical signal. And that's what all the devices today are doing. Our microphones, our speakers are trying to emulate that sophisticated mechanism that's there. in our bodies, and then we make meaning of this image, right? So this process of consumption, which otherwise we used to see, at least largely, mostly the first impulse is to just see as the eye. Eye sees. We say we see it through our eyes, but we don't see through our eyes. We don't see through our ears. We are just, that's just the device. It's like the camera, lens of the camera. But there is so much happening behind it to make sure that we can actually first receive that and convert it into an image, process it, and then make meaning of that image. That's when consumption is complete. And pratyahar is processes which is taking us away from, typically the consumption happens in 1 and 2, right? The first, our typical perception is very externally oriented. It's 1 and 2, what's happening outside and we are receiving it. So what happens? Our senses, our external orientation is what is affecting our mind. So the flow is in this way. The ahar is happening in this way. It's coming from outside to inside. Our mind is getting affected by what's outside. Pratyahar is about consciously now changing it, reversing that. So looking at, observing our internal process of perception or consumption. So focusing on 3 and 4, and then seeing, realizing that what role they play in our comprehension. And this is very classically seen when we look at a painting, and different people will make different meanings out of that painting, right? It will be the same stimulus, the same painting is in front, but what you would see, what I would see, what a third person would see would probably something different in that painting. Some would look at the stroke, some would look at the color, the redness of it, etc. And some would focus on, oh, what's this? It's about a party. So they'll extend more in the meaning of it. So for some 3 and 4 might be good, some 1 and 2. But pratyahar is really about focusing more and more on the 3 and 4, reverse the process. And as a result, what then starts happening is that your mind becomes in charge of the senses, not the other way. The mind will then affect, the flow will become reversed, where the mind will say, this is what I want to see, this is what I want to consume. It becomes more and more clear, rather than what is in front of me, I consume. That's what's happening today, or that's what happens usually, right? With the process of pratyahar, and this is enabled by asana, pranayam, yam, niyam, asana, pranayam. So that sequence helps, being aware of them, to build this kind of awareness in our internal mechanism in pratyahar. So the tools of pratyahar, there are specific tools. Again, Hatha Yoga texts have them, and we will be, I think, covering some of them. So Nada Anusandhan or Nad Yoga, Brahmari with Shanmukhi Mudra, Trataka. These are some tools that people have talked about on what tools of pratyahar, which help us enhance this this sense of our perception and sort of reverse the flow of consumption. So it starts becoming our choice what we consume and not whatever is present. Yes.
So also, Sandeep, I see it as discrimination that we talk about in the Vigyanmaya Kosha.
So this is not still going there. Okay. That will get activated. This is, as I said, at the edge of Pranamaya and Manomaya. So it's actually, so there is a part of the brain. So it's not as much going into the mind or the intellect, but it's the physical also part of the brain where our sensing happens, right? So the temporal lobes are, which are here, right? Above the ears is where we process sound. The backside is where we process light, for example, right? So this is about getting awareness of that. We haven't still gone into Antarang. It's still Bahirang Yoga.
Is it like activating your willpower?
So that's again the mind. I'm still saying it's very much in the yeah, it's there. So it's the hardest because we are so used to our senses being just about 1 and 2. I think that's why delineated. We think we are seeing only through our eyes, but the meaning, the processing of it is happening here, and it's getting aware of that. It's getting aware of that.
I'm trying to use an example to kind of internalize the concept. is it something like you hear there is a lot of noise going on, but you're hearing only selectively so that you cancel out that noise, something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's what are you cancelling out and what are you consuming?
How about
So
bias?
right now it's a very unaware process. It happens by default. We don't know what is white noise, when that is happening. So it's becoming very conscious about it. Yeah, Sandeep.
How about bias? So I'll say that I'll take out 1 and 2. I'm not seeing anything, but still you just tell me a word. Let's say a black and a white man right here. Certain images pop up. That's 3 and 4.
Yes.
Is that a
Yes,
good example?
something like that. Yeah. So becoming aware of our biases, beginning to, but biases come from a default wiring. So it's not the mind anymore. It's actually the wiring. It's the pranamaya, annamaya which is operating there.
But everybody's, let's say, wiring could be the same, but the whatever we have consumed since our childhood,
Yes.
that is the bias,
Yeah.
right?
And that's what the wiring is not the same. Structurally, it looks the same. Yes, we are made of neurons, but how the neurons are connected are not the same. That's what makes everyone unique. That's what makes it so diverse, right? Physiologically, it's not the same wiring, but yeah, it's neurons here, but how the neurons are connected are very different. And that's what is the different meanings. Yes?
I think artificial intelligence has the best example. It's like or machine learning for that matter of fact, what you feed it is what it learns. So it's about controlling the feed so that you can control what the learning is. Because Sandeep, I mean, if I hear what you're saying that that bias or that learning is not on a conscious level. It has become unconscious because it has become too part of what you are, because that's
Yes.
what has been taught.
Yes. And this is about making that process very conscious. So that's why it's at that interface, because this affects our mind directly.